Welcome back, Brandon.
Hi, everyone. It's been a while.
It's been a long while. And man, it's not for lack of trying, but over the last 3 or 4 weeks, I keep thinking, okay, let's just do a podcast. And then I'll call you guys or text you guys and you'll be like, yeah, let's do it. And then it comes time to do it. And I'm like, it's kind of cool to go shooting today. So let's not do it.
Yeah,
So
and then I've been out of
finally,
town so much.
yeah. And finally today we decided we had to do it without Eric. He's out shooting. He's in the same boat. He's like, no, I got to go. And we can fill you in on his status, but he's been out of commission for a while. So now that he is back in commission, he's wants to go shoot. I'll throw a picture in the podcast from he and I were out shooting some moose the other day, and I was taking just an iPhone shot of him because he looked regal, all standing up there with his camera and stuff. And he's like, yeah. He was all excited because he hit the record button for the first time this fall. So he had a knee surgery done, just an orthoscopic thing, but very fast recovery. But he was out for probably 3 or 4 weeks. With the pre stuff, he didn't want to mess it up more. Had the surgery, and then there's the recovery. And then right after he got kind of recovered, he got a cold. So then he's like, I can't be around anybody. He was going out by himself. And then with his knee recovery, he's like, I'll focus on audio just so I don't have to carry all this weight. So he'd go out with the microphone, and the only way to do that is to go by yourself because you can't get decent audio when you got somebody walking through the grass or whatever it is. So he's been doing a lot of solo stuff with the microphone, but finally he feels like comfortable enough to carry a camera around, and he's out today. He's like, no, I don't want to do a podcast. And I said, I don't blame you, buddy. I've been in that boat for the last 4 months.
Wrangling cats.
Yeah. But we got a lot of stuff
Well,
to talk about. So I figured
yeah, we have a
you and
lot
I
of
can
stuff
do
to
it.
talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So we're going to label this season 2 of the Truth and Legend podcast. We stopped season 1 earlier than we expected, but things, like Michael said, we just got way too busy. Maybe we should maybe you should do an intro for yourself, and then I can introduce myself.
So I'm Michael Mauro. I'm based in Alaska most of the time. I actually am thinking about spending the winter up here this year. So I get a lot of grief from locals that are like, so you call yourself an Alaska resident, eh?
Fair weather Alaskan.
Yeah. And I'm like, they got a point there, but I used to come up in the winter for at least 2 weeks, sometimes a month, but I haven't done that in a while just because we've been so busy with work. So I decided this year it's kind of slow with work, so I'm going to put in a full winter. Although most of the reason I go back to Colorado is because of my folks. My folks are still alive. I want to see them. That's the best time to do it. They totally understand my line of work, so while they would love for me to be there during the summer, it's just too good to be up here for that. But if I can go down and hang out with them, so there'll be some time during the holidays when I'm down there. But I'm thinking January, February, March, April. I just want to experience the full on. And you talk to a lot of the locals up here. There's so much cool stuff to do if you don't mind the snow sports, and obviously just dress
Cold.
for it. So yeah, cold and somewhat dark.
Oh, yeah. So I'm Brandon Day. I'm out of Denver. I don't travel anywhere for winter. I stay here the whole time. It's a tough winter in Denver, No, it's not bad. It's actually 80 degrees today, Michael. I don't know how it's up there, but it's typical Colorado day. Blue sky, 80 degrees, just bright sunny. And it's been that
Yeah,
way for a week. So
October.
yeah.
Usually October in Colorado is pretty dang nice. So
Yeah, I mean, the leaves are changing, so it's getting beautiful. I was up in the mountains I don't know. I'm having like a groundhog's weekend, or I couldn't even tell you what day of the week it is. I know it's a school day because Dean's at school,
it's
but
Tuesday.
otherwise it's like, yeah, Tuesday. Yeah, but yeah, leaves are changing and fall's here. They haven't blown off yet, which is a non-typical Colorado thing. Most of the time it gets windy in the fall, but yeah, we have it all. Yeah.
Yeah, the fall's about done here. I have a tree right outside my window here that is really beautiful, and it actually turns really yellow. But it's one of the first trees in this area where I'm at that goes yellow, and so it goes to Charlie Brown status really quick. And right now, it's no leaves at all. But if I can look out
Man,
past that, there are some trees that still have leaves. But it's cool because you walk into areas where in the summer there's no way you can even see into it. But now with a lot of
yeah.
the leaves falling, you can kind of see into stuff. So it's kind of cool. And the other cool
Yep.
thing about Alaska is you travel further north and fall happens early. Arctic,
Hmm.
it's August. And then you slowly move down. I was in Denali a few weeks ago.
Hmm.
It was there. It was full on color up there. It's still green down here. And then now
Oh,
you
beautiful.
then you get fall here. And so it's a time thing. But where we've been shooting the moose, which is kind of high up in the mountains, it's all brown now already.
Oh. Did you get some shots with them in the fall foliage?
So this year's been really interesting. I did. To answer your question, I
Okay.
did. But it's been a whole thing this year with these moose. What we used to be able to count on, we
Hmm.
haven't been able to count on this year. So it's been a lot
Oh,
more
interesting.
deviating to other places, and we've been successful. We have like 3 places this year where we go, and in years past we would just go to one place and just count on getting really cool stuff. So it is
Hmm.
what it is. But I'll throw in some
Any,
clips.
yeah, any conclusions or even guesses as to why that's happening? Or
Yeah, there's a lot of talk up there in the one spot we go, just because they do allow a late season hunt up there for
mm,
uh, antlerless moose.
oh,
So it could potentially be a bull, if they
yep,
lose their antlers early, which November and December are pretty much when these antlers fall.
hmm,
So I think it's mostly cows, but they've been doing it for like 5 years.
oh,
And I think it just takes out that part of the population. And
mm,
so it doesn't seem like there's as many cows. And with that, it's going to change the demographic. But that's not the only thing. I think that's a factor. But then there's also too many people, too many photographers.
yeah,
It's partly our fault. Not necessarily, you know, I don't know. Is it I don't know. There's no way you could pinpoint what it is. There's also
right,
last year we were filming these moose, and we filmed some wolves, and that's the first time I've
oh,
ever had wolves in that area, and I've been filming up there for a lot of years. And so I was talking to another buddy, and he's like, "Yeah, that wolf pack is growing." In fact, there was a video that came out on Instagram or Facebook
hmm,
or something, probably 2-3 weeks ago, and it was a pack of wolves hunting some moose right here in
oh,
Anchorage.
interesting.
Yeah, and they brought down a calf right here in Anchorage, and you figure they're doing that
Whoa,
probably weekly or
huh?
maybe every couple of weeks. So there's all kinds of factors, and I don't think you can pinpoint any one of them, and I don't think you can put the blame on any one thing. I think it's
Mm,
just a bunch of
no,
stuff. But there's also history. I mean, is it typical? Does it ebb
yep,
and flow? Not that obviously the population up there is down, but does that mean they just moved over to another valley? Because there's
right,
bulls that we see other years that haven't showed up. So did they not show up because they died over the winter? Or did they not show
hmm,
up because they just found a better place for this fall?
hmm,
Sometimes bulls that we expect to show up late. So they're still
yeah,
alive, but they don't participate in the rut in that particular area. So I don't think you could. I'm not going to blame anything or any one thing, but I think it's a variety of factors. But it's still been fun, and we've still been finding stuff.
yeah. And with the predation, who knows if you guys were at that kind of the top of the prey curve where there was a ton of moose at that point. And now you're kind of at the bottom of it where the predators have moved in and they're kind of taking their fill.
Yeah, and
It's
did the
interesting.
did the moose move to a whole different area because they were getting pressured by the wolves?
Right.
But again, that's just one factor.
Yeah.
It's
Who knows?
There's
Yeah.
a lot of activity. I mean, you can't go up there on a nice day and not see a jillion people. But that's what makes the moose there so good is they're
Right.
fairly um, habituated to people, so that makes the filming really good. The
Yeah.
better place to film and the more I guess, I don't know, bigger bulls or cooler atmosphere is Denali, but they close off the prime area for that during the rut. So while you can still get images, it's really hard and you just do a lot of driving. And so I don't like
Well, and you
doing that as
mentioned
much.
you were in Denali. How did that go?
We did some
Yeah.
hiking around. We
Okay.
found not much. It was beautiful. I got a bunch of cool, autumn foliage stuff, but we took some bikes and did a little bit of scouting around, hoping that we would see some caribou or some moose or
Yeah.
anything, wolves. One of the best things I ever shot was a pack of wolves bringing down a moose about a mile from that campground. And so the chances are always there, but I was out on my bike a lot just looking and I never saw anything.
Well, and we actually, you told us that whole story with, and it had a bunch of images. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go check it out. It's a story behind the image, which actually, story behind the image, we like that idea. So you came up with a good plan. Maybe you want to talk about what we're going to try and move forward here with, not on the Truth and Legend channel, but somewhere else.
Yeah, so I was thinking everywhere I go, people recognize me or recognize that our podcast and I was hiking down a trail the other day and this dude passed me. He's like, when are you going to start the podcast again? And I didn't know if he meant this one or the Wild and Exposed podcast. And I'm like, oh man. And I get it everywhere. Friends, people I don't know. So
Mm-hmm.
Wild and Exposed went away because it was just a lot of work and it just was, it just didn't work. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
well, let's just put it on the shelf and we'll just figure it out. And then we started ours because we were going to do more than just wildlife. We were going to do a little bit of everything and kind
Yeah.
of new players. And it would be me and you and Brandon, or me and you and Eric. And we would cover just a little bit of everything because you
Mm-hmm.
are a working photographer that shoots all kinds of stuff. So
Right.
whether we cover cars or real estate or just ways to make a living as a photographer, that works good on this channel. Now we still are very heavy in the wildlife stuff, but we still have that Wild and Exposed that just sits out there. So I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking, well, the story behind the image is kind of cool. So you run across people all the time that, with phones these days, people are always like, hey, check this out. And every now and then you see some images that are like, that is really cool. Tell me the
Mm-hmm.
story behind how you got that image. So I'm thinking, why don't we just do that? We find cool images. Doesn't matter who the photographer is, but if they're willing to do a podcast and sit down and talk to us, we'll just start posting the story behind that particular image from whoever it is on the Wild and Exposed channel. So it'll still be us as hosts, but we're going to be talking to whoever that is that has that image. And every now and then it could be us with the new image that we got. But I think it'd be really cool to be able to put in, just a variety of photographers. I mean, we've had Kate and Adam Rice on the podcast before, but I don't know that we've ever talked to them about a specific image. And they've got some cool ones. So I thought we could start
Yeah.
out easily with those guys. Or we got Moose Man. We've got a couple other buddies. I met a guy the other day who showed me some images from Michigan and was like, holy smokes, that's pretty
Cool.
cool stuff. And it was all sandhill cranes. So
Oh.
there's plenty of content. We just need to schedule it and do it. So, and the story behind the image, I think, would be of interest to. It's of interest to
Mm-hmm.
me as a photographer just to hear other people's experiences. And a lot of times, those really special images, while they can be serendipity, a lot of times it's just a lot of work that went into, you know, weeks or months of figuring it out to then get this image that you either preconceived or just because
Mm-hmm.
you've developed this pattern and you've got things figured out and you know where the sun's going to be and you know where the nest is at or you know where the animal walks or you know where the animal mates or whatever it is. They
Mm-hmm.
just have really good, so there should be really good stories that come out of that. So that's
Yeah.
the plan for that. So stay tuned.
I like it.
Yeah.
Oh, and if you have suggestions for that, if you have an image that you want to know the story behind it, let us know. Our email's down in the notes section. So just shoot us an email and we'll try and get in touch with the photographer. Speaking of photos, when was the last photo you took of wildlife? Because I know you took a bunch of photos because we were just out working not too long ago. But when was the last time you actually took a photo of wildlife not on your iPhone?
So I came up with a new plan this year. Um,
So
it's been raining a lot. Although the last week it's been super nice here, which I'd rather have the rain and the clouds, but it's
Yeah.
been sunny and it's with video. It's just I don't think it looks as good, but I still go out and shoot. But it's hard to keep the red cameras dry because you're always
Hmm.
holding an umbrella, or you take a coat and put over it, or you like a real pro would actually have a camera cover. So I've never really had an actual camera cover. So my plan this year was, is if it had the threat of rain, I would just take my stills camera out. So I did that. So I actually shot a couple of
Oh,
images this year with my stills camera, and it was fun. It's really
wow.
fun. Yeah. And I just took a little 70 to 300 lens that I have,
Okay.
and it's really small little package. And I ended up shooting some handheld video. I think I was
Wow.
talking to
Of
you the other
moose?
day. Yeah. And I think it turned
That's
out pretty
cool.
good. So nowadays
Well, and
with
then
the
I know you
software,
took some from a boat as well.
yeah, I went out with Dan Carline, and we shot some stills out there, which was kind of cool. We got humpbacks, bubblenet feeding, we got orcas, um, we got puffins, we got seals, we got all kinds of cool stuff. So that
Still
was,
haven't got my
you
puffin.
can't shoot video out there. It's just impossible with
Yeah.
the rough, just swells or even rough seas. Forget it. It's even hard to shoot a still and just make, it's just a timing thing. And
Hmm.
so unless you have a $500,000 gimbal, although you can get a Ronin 3, and actually Dan, the guy who owns the boat, Dan Carline, which he's going to have a business up here next year, an actual commercial business to take photographers out.
Hmm.
He's got what is it, the Ronin 3?
Hmm.
The most current
The
little
gimbal
handheld
system.
Ronin.
Yeah.
Yeah, gimbal.
Oh no,
Um,
the RS4 I think is the new handheld one.
okay,
Or are you
so
talking about the
whatever that
double
new
one?
one is, he's got it, and he runs,
Okay.
I don't know what lens he puts on, like 24 to 105, but when these whales are
Oh.
coming up, you never know where they're going to come up. Sometimes they can be 50 feet away, or sometimes they're 150 feet away, or whatever. But he's just always ready, and he's getting some pretty cool stuff. So you could do it with the gimbal with the small lens. You just need to have the time to be out there. So you couldn't do it on one of these big cruises where they have 75 people on the boat. But
Right.
if you go out and get a boat where it's just two or three photographers and everybody's willing to spend as much time as it takes, then I think you could probably do it with video.
Oh, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Man.
So
Okay.
that'll be something we should. Well, we'll definitely look into it for next year for us. But he's getting his captain's license this year, so it was cool to go out with him. He just wanted the days out there. I think it requires 300 and some odd days of boat being on a boat.
Being out on the sea, yeah.
There had to be like 60 days within the last calendar year that were
Oh
documented.
geez.
So and he had some of them, but you know, he was telling me it's like the amount of money he has to spend for him to go out and get those days, fuel and all that stuff.
Hmm.
It gets kind of expensive. So I helped him out with that, which gave me a pretty cheap trip,
Access. Yeah.
but it got him. So that's going to go away from me because he's going to have to start making money with his boat next year. So if I want to call
Right.
him up and say, "Hey, can I buy your gas and you take me out?" He'll be like,
Day rate went
"No."
up.
Yeah. Guess what? It's $1,200 a day.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So,
Well, that's
but yeah,
cool.
the boat stuff's pretty cool. And I did shoot some stills. And it's pretty cool because you get puffins, otters, sea otters, seals, sea lions, whales, just all kinds of stuff.
Man, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Glaciers. You can get a lot of
Yeah,
glacier
lots
stuff
of
because
glaciers. Yeah.
which is pretty awesome.
And where's his boat out of?
Seward.
Okay. Oh, so
Yeah.
I mean, it's
So
everything.
you just drive down to Seward and hop on the boat. And then I just um, went out 2 weekends, 3 weekends with him.
Okay.
Before the, um, well, so there's this whole progression of stuff that we do every year. So you do Seward and you do the water stuff in July. So anything that's related to the fish, the salmon, you want to do in July.
Hmm.
And then that includes black bears and brown bears. And
Hmm.
then, so, but they don't get hot and heavy for a minute. So you want to do the whales before the black bears and brown bears get hot and heavy. And then you go do the bears. And then you
Hmm.
progress from the bears to the moose. and then whatever else. So there's a million things to do. I do the same thing every year. I probably should change it up and do something better, or different. But I don't think you could ever
That,
document everything
no,
of the
because every
same
time I talk
stuff.
to you, there's something new, like with the moose.
Yeah, yeah, it's a big question mark all the time. And I was talking with Moose Man the other day because we're still working on that documentary too.
Yep,
And there's just so many questions that unless you put a satellite tracker on one of these bulls, which would be really awesome,
that'd be
I
amazing.
don't know that you could ever. And you would have to have a tracker on them for 2 or 3 years just to see if there's an
Hmm.
exact pattern or is it deviate or it's got to deviate, but it can't deviate. You wouldn't think it would deviate that much, but who knows?
Right. Huh.
It would be so fun if you
Oh, I'm
had
sure
that
Moose Man's
info.
just having a field day with new spots and new moose, and
He's relentless, man, and it's the what is it? It's the digging into the story part of it all that's so interesting to him. It's like, oh yeah, that's that bull, and we saw that bull in this year, and now he's here, and but he's gonna go to here, and I can't keep track of them all, but he's got them all kind of dialed in. He's like, oh yeah, that's that bull we saw in 2018 on August 17th. I'm like,
that's
that's
funny.
cool. I kind of remember that, but I couldn't never tell you the exact date or whatever. But he's got it all dialed in,
Right.
so it's kind of fun.
Huh. That's funny. Well, that's
Yeah,
good,
yeah, no, it's good stuff.
man.
So, what have you been up to? I know that you and did some. Well, you and I did a shoot in New
Yeah,
Mexico, a
you came
commercial
down to help
shoot.
me with that one.
That
Yep.
was
And
cool.
that was a huge shoot. So that one, the client needed. Um, I can't speak too much about it, but I can. They needed something filmed, but it was in the middle of nowhere, and it was a large project. And so Michael and I went down. We drove, I don't know, 2.5 hours to the middle of nowhere. We stayed in one of those motels that you back into and park your car right in front of your door, which was fantastic. And then we were supposed to film a helicopter, and so we did it from the air with a drone. We did it with the reds, and then also stills, and that's how I know he took pictures because he was taking stills for
Oh, that's right.
the
You got to do stills
helicopter
on
and
that
everything.
too.
Yeah, you did do stills, and so we went out there and we got there a day early. We get to this hotel. There's barely any service, so we used our Starlink, and that thing is a cheat code, dude. Like internet wherever you need it. It's fantastic. And then we went out the next day, and that's the helicopter was up in the air, which was a little bit scary to be honest. Like that pilot was pretty cool, and he was like, "Yeah, get as close as you need." But in the back of my mind, I'm like, if this drone gets sucked up into the rotors, like it's game over, and you could potentially kill 3 people. So you don't want to do that. And so I was pretty hesitant to get close, and he had no problems. But we got some really cool footage of this helicopter working, and the helicopter was in the air almost the whole day. So uh, we have a lot of good content on that helicopter. If we ever get the thumbs up to share that, I'll be sure to circle back and show some of that content. But essentially, it's a big 2-seater helicopter, high horsepower, and then well, it's for linemen, so I can at least say that for electrical transmission stuff. And they hang this guy off of a rope like 100 feet down, and then they fly these guys back and forth in between the lines, and it's nuts. And so you get some really cool stuff, but you got to be fast because they're moving quick. I mean, they did, I don't know, it was a half a mile of line in, I don't know, 30 minutes, 40 minutes of doing all that. So it keeps you on your toes. I've been working on that commercial stuff for this project for 4 months now. And so it's kept me really busy, all in the middle of nowhere, it seems like. I've been in Nebraska, Wyoming, here in Colorado, out by like Haxton and Burlington, which is, there's not much out there. There's a good place to eat in Burlington, Colorado, if you ever need it. But aside from that, there's not much. I was eating Loves and Quick Trip and whatever else was at the. I packed a lot of peanut butter and jellies in the fridge. So yeah, it's been busy. And then I've been doing a lot of other little jobs. Like last night, I had a rehearsal dinner, and so we got that all photographed. And the night before was another event. there's a Ferrari shoot tonight. It's just one thing after another. The
Yeah, you were
Ferrari
supposed
stuff
to
will be
come to
fun.
Alaska and you couldn't make it because you just keep getting more and more work, and you can't turn down
I,
the work to come and do
I
something
know.
that's not going to get paid. So I get it,
Yep.
but it gets in the way of having fun, right?
Yeah,
But
I was supposed to be up there this week.
the flip side is you're making money as a photographer, which
True.
it's if anybody can do it, the work is there. You just got to be willing to do the grind, get it
Yep.
going.
Yeah. Just take every job you can. So, and
Yeah,
it'll,
and I don't know, did we
like,
talk since
yeah,
we've been, this spring, you and I went and did a shoot for one of my big clients, and
I don't think so.
I don't know if we had a
Well, we've been out a
podcast.
few times for you.
So yeah, we were in Boston, and then we were in Pittsburgh, and we were somewhere else, I
New
think.
York.
New York. Oh yeah, New
Yeah.
York. So
Yeah.
we've been staying busy. I gotta say, I haven't been. I feel like I'm retired this year. The wildlife work has been non-existent. I did do a 3-week shoot in the Arctic
Yeah.
that was wildlife oriented, but man, the state of the wildlife filming world is pretty slow right now, and it is slow across the board. Everybody says 2025 should be a little bit better, but we'll have to see. There's so many people out of work. I think it's going to be hard even to get work in 2025 if it does come back, because unless you're like in the proper area or the exact area for
Mhm.
whatever they're wanting to shoot, I don't know that even 2025 will be that great. So we'll just have to see.
Yeah,
But
and it seems like there's a push to try and use local
mm,
talent. I'll call it to get that filmed, but I don't know. I don't know how well that's going to work. Given, I mean, there's definitely niches where you have like I was just reading about a doctor that's also a filmmaker, and she gets some really good underwater stuff. But there's not a doctor that's also a filmmaker in every little part of the wild world. So I don't know. That'll be
well, and you
interesting.
got to let them know that you are that person for that area too, right? So, which
Hmm.
requires a lot of social media attention. And you're like, I've got hours and hours and hours and tons of behavior with moose, but I don't know how many people actually know that I do that, right? So I need to
Right.
get, or we need to get dialed back in with the social media, the podcast, all that kind of stuff, and just start promoting some of the stuff that we're shooting extensively to show that, hey, if you need Alaska, we can probably help you out.
Yeah.
And then vice versa with Colorado or the West or whatever.
Yeah. I
But
haven't been doing much wildlife, to be honest. So I have my like backyard moments. I'll call them. There was a hummingbird that would go to the same perch, so I would wait for him, and I finally got that takeoff and landing. Which you watch them do this 10 times, and then you set the camera up, and then you point it at the tree, right, and they just disappear. So then you're like, well, are they going to come back? Did I miss the moment? And it did take another 3 days after that observation to actually getting it recorded, which was a pain. Um, and then I have dogs and kids running around. And it's well, dog and kid and dogs. There we go. So just getting that, and then we had it was like a 60-degree day, and that's where the temperature of those like snakes get really kind of sluggish. And there was 3 garter snakes, and they all kind of clumped together in this tree. So I was able to film that, but it's kind of a boring shot because they're not doing anything. They're just trying to survive and stay warm. So they're all just clumped together. But it was just a cool moment to hang out with some snakes. And then I had a horned caterpillar, which was riveting for most people I know, but it was fun to film. I need to buy a macro lens. That's what I
mm,
need to do.
I have one. I'll just let you use it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think shooting that kind of stuff is important because it's really great to go shoot all this keystone species or the, what do they call it? Uh, Megafauna.
Megafauna, yeah.
That's really cool. It's fun to shoot those guys, but everybody does it. How many people
Yeah.
shot a horned caterpillar? The thing is with video, you got to have all this behavior, and then you got to build the story, and you got to have all this stuff that
Right.
kind of ties it all together. So you could spend a whole summer trying to document all that stuff, and it's just a lot of work to
Yeah.
for nothing. But who knows if it's for nothing, because down the road somebody might be like, oh well, I saw this guy did this and he did a really good job on it, so could you go out and do it with a praying mantis, or could you go out and do it with a whatever? And yeah, you
Yep.
could. You just, once you've perfected all the little tricks and tips. And one thing I wanted to revisit is when we went to New Mexico, you showed up with a bunch of new stuff. And I don't want to be too much into the gear stuff, but you have the
Yeah.
Starlink setup, which is not new. I mean, everybody knows about it, and it works really great, and it's very helpful.
Yep.
But you also had the new Ronin. What is it? The Ronin 4?
It's the Ronin 4D is the platform, and then they have the ZenMuse cameras, which are attached to the front of it. And I was just having a really hard time with the red because that helium's heavy, and even the RS4 Pro, which is their biggest handheld one that's on the upright stick.
So the RS4 gimbal is what you
Gimbal,
mean.
yep,
Yeah.
with that helium with a 24 to 105. It was doable, but it was a pain, and I wasn't getting what I wanted. And so I ended up just doing the helium handheld, which was fine. Which I've learned a lot about all of that stuff. So once you move into these reds, because I came from the Sony side, and so the sensor you got is the sensor you have. You don't have to do any modifications to it. You just change your white balance. You can change all your settings and everything. But from the camera perspective, you really aren't changing much. Maybe the rigging or how you have it set up. But with these reds, I kept getting these little red dots when I was shooting into the sun because I wanted the shot with the sun in the background and some of these work boots and them in the dirt and some of that dust moving off. And I kept getting these red dots. And so I talked to Michael and he's like, oh, yeah, you need to change your OLPF. And so then it sent me down this whole thing. And so then I was like, well, which one do I want? And so the skin tone will get rid of those dots. But then there's different noise that is introduced at different ISO levels. And it just turned into this whole thing. So I ended up with like 3 different OLPFs, which is good because I learned to use them. But it's just these nuances of using a red that like there's no course out there. I'm sure if I called Red, they could get me in touch with someone and there's a course that can get me there for the right price. But if you just go buy it, like there's no instruction manual that says, oh, you will get red dots if you use this OLPF. And so it's been an endeavor. So through that whole process, I wanted to get rid of the FX6 is where this was all stemming from. It's a fantastic camera, but for what I do, it does not work. And the main reason of that is it has no stabilization, like none of the in-body stuff. The FX3 and the FX30 already have the lens attachments, so I can record with whatever I want. They do everything that I need them to minus neutral density, and I can add that on the front of the lens relatively easy. They all have screw-in filters nowadays, so it's very easy to add that. So I don't really need that FX6. And so I got rid of that, and through that process, I was introduced to this Ronin 4D, which is not a new camera. It's actually a pretty old camera. I think it's 4 years old at this point. But they had upgraded the camera to the ZenMuse 8K. And what that did is it brought down all these prices of the old 6K sensor. And so I picked one up, and the platform comes with the new DJI transmission system. So you get a monitor, it'll transmit through that system. You can control this camera, and then it has a gimbal system built into it. And it's like scary good on the stabilization side. It has XY stabilization, but then it also has an arm that looks like a chicken head that pops up, and it will control the Z axis. So you can run with it and it'll still control it back and forth and up and down and left, right. And it's bonkers. And so I've been using that camera a lot for a lot of the handheld stuff. It's a lot lighter. Its deficiency is really it uses the Inspire lens platform, and there's 5 lenses I think in total. Most of them are prime with the exception of one, and I think it's a 17 to 28, and it's good, and it's a power zoom, so you can control it. But 28 is kind of short for some of the stuff that we do, especially with some of this industrial stuff that I've been filming. You just need to be closer. So I've been shooting a lot with the primes, honestly, and then the red on the big fluid head with a 100 to 400 and shooting the really tight stuff with that. But a lot of the handheld stuff where I would be doing like an orbit or something around someone working, I've been using that Ronin, and it uses D-Log, which is their log platform. It looks really good. It's a heavier log version of what everyone probably is familiar with on that Pocket 3 that we've actually used a ton of, and it grades really easy. It's really pretty. It records in Apple ProRes, so you get a really robust grading platform. It's a good file. It's a little heavy on the file size, but it's a good file. So yeah, and it plays. The other thing is it's not an MXF file, so when you play it in your viewer in an Apple, and this is a big thing for me, and I don't know why it became such a big issue, but when you're previewing your clips, when you're pulling them over, you can't do that with those FX6 files. And so you'd hit spacebar and it'd just pull up the file name, like, oh yeah, that's what it is, and you'd have to actually pull it into Resolve or Premiere or whatever you wanted to look at. And I had a ton of issues where I would drop it onto Dropbox or Google Drive or even my delivery platform, and the person that received it would lose an audio channel, or they'd lose 2 audio channels. And it happened with that MXF file so many times. And I don't know why, if it's the compression or something that has to happen on the back end to get it in those file folders. But it hasn't happened with any of the red footage, and it hasn't happened with any of the, well, it only happened with the FX6. So I don't know. So that was a lot there. I don't know if it
No,
made
it's
any
good.
sense.
I think it's a really, for the kind of work that you're doing, the industrial work, it's, and I see a lot of applications for wildlife too, especially if you set up that camera and then you run it remotely. You know, like with the moose, it probably wouldn't be that great because every time they see something new, they just go over and they sniff it, or, you know, the bulls, they'll just hit it with their antlers, so you could destroy a camera pretty easy. But it would be super cool to get some of those more intimate moments if you could set it up and then step back, you know, quite a ways and run the camera.
Yeah, and that cool thing is you can put those 2 handles. It has 2 handles, and one is the gimbal movement, so you control your gimbal up, down, left, right, that whole thing. And then on the right side, it actually has a wheel, and you can control that. The way I have it set up is it's a focus wheel by standard, and then you can press and hold a button and then roll it, and that'll be your zoom if you're using the power zoom. And so with those moose, what's really cool with that Ronin is you can actually take the camera and separate it from the body. You lose your Z-axis stabilization, so that arm that takes bumps, for example, you lose that system. And you can actually stash that camera body away. So we could put that away in a Pelican case and hide it in some bush. And then you run this flex system up, and you have a small camera system that is then able to be placed somewhere. And so that would be really cool. And I want to play with that. I haven't bought the flex system because it's another $1,000 like everything else.
More
it used
money.
to be like, oh, $100, you know, and now it's $1,000, and it's just, that is the one knock I'll say with the DJI system. In order to record some of this stuff, you have to use their proprietary SSDs. They're $800 for a terabyte, and it's like, come on, guys, like I can go buy a Crucial for $219 and get 2 terabytes. So hopefully higher adoption rates gets better hard drive prices, but I don't know. I just don't think the Ronin's going to be a wildly, like a lot of our listeners are not going to go buy a Ronin. And so that, like, there's no need for it.
But anybody that's wanting to get something different, whether it's wildlife or industrial or as a working videographer or cinematographer or whatever, it's one of those things where I think it's going to give you the opportunity to get the shots that aren't just the standard. I run into it all the time where I'm shooting a long lens. That's just because it's my favorite thing to do. But what am I getting that hasn't been got 17,000 times already? Right. You know, and then you're like, I got to add some movement. Okay, I'll pan right. Ooh,
right.
What a move. So I think getting some of that stuff and making it more intimate moments is what needs to happen. So I think there's probably a lot of people that at least need to know about it. Whether they
Yeah.
use it or
Well,
not, who knows?
and it's nice for like as a Sony shooter, DJI and Sony. I don't know if there's maybe some of the executives know each other or something. I don't know, but they talk really well and they work with each other really well. DJI has developed a bunch of products that work well with Sony. Well, Sony actually gave them the mount, and so you can change out the mounting platform, much like a Red, and you can change it from their DJI mount to a Sony E mount, and you can mount your E mount lenses. And so I bought that. It was what actually came with that package because I think they're just trying to get rid of them. And so I can mount, like if I wanted to throw a 70 to 200 on there, I can do it. I haven't tried it yet. I think that's probably going to be pretty heavy. But that new 70 to 200 that I've been using is pretty light. And it might be able to get away with that out there. I just don't know. They have a bunch of weights that you can add onto the back of the gimbal to help with getting that balanced.
The counterbalance.
Yeah, and I haven't played with that yet. I've just been using the I think it's a 75 that I've been using, and then the 17 to 28 zoom.
Well, the cool thing is your zoom becomes your feet, and if you're shooting not wildlife
Right.
where you can control it, or you know that you're shooting some sort of industrial scene or commercial scene or whatever, where a bunch of guys are working on something or a bunch of people are working on this or whatever, and I say guys because most of these linemen
Yeah,
are, I don't even think we saw much.
I've seen one female this whole time.
Yeah, so it's just not a job that a lot of them do, but
Right.
it's you can control it. You can get in and if they're discussing a problem or whatever, your feet become your zoom, and then it's easy. But with wildlife, it's
Yeah.
not. So the bigger lenses would be great, but who knows what? It's just time, And if you're trying to make a living, you don't have like 2 weeks to figure out a camera system. But if you did perfect it, then that becomes your calling card for
Yeah,
potential
and I'm
calling card
trying
for
to
a lot
use
of
it
cool stuff.
right, and I'm trying to use it for more than just gimbal work. So I've actually used it for interview work. The event on last week that I filmed, I use that same system, so it's going to be, I think, a staple in my. I've been using it more than anything else aside from like my stills cameras. And I'm actually demoing a. Well, I'm not demoing. I'm renting the A9 III right now, which is a little bit of a frustration. I'll be honest, from Sony. Like, here it is. I was pulling pictures off last night, and so the A9 III. But if you're a Sony shooter, the first thing you're going to notice is this all looks different. Here's the A1. They changed the darn camera ergonomics again.
Hold on, it's out of
So that
focus.
oh, so that's an A1. Oh,
And what's the difference? Like all the
feels
buttons and
more like
stuff?
a Nikon. So they've rounded it out. They've increased the grip size for people like me that have complained, I think, a bunch. Not that Sony's listening to me, but I'm saying people like that. They've increased the grip size. You can kind of see right here. It's all raised up now, and it actually looks like a camera versus just this slab of metal that's been machined out. But that means that your battery grip from the A7 IV, R4, R5, A1 doesn't fit anymore. So you got to go buy new accessories. So there's some cool things on it. It has global shutter. So you don't get any banding with screens when you're using electronic shutter, which is pretty nice. Your flash sync speed is all the way up at like 1/500. So I was using that last night during sunsets, which was pretty cool. Aside from that, like I don't shoot in the sun with a flash very much. So I don't use the higher sync speeds too often. Most time I'm down at that 1/250, 1/200. And then they adopted this is only for Sony shooters, so sorry everyone else, but the A7 IV had a really nice dial that was specific still settings, specific video settings, and then specific S&Q settings, which is their slow and quick settings. It's for like time lapses or higher than 120 frames per second. And so you could set your memory for video, for example, and then have your memory recall separate for video and photo versus having to have it all mashed into one. And so that was a nice benefit, but I don't know. These cameras are, I don't know. I'm still the A7 IV, which is their base entry level full frame, still takes better photos than I'm capable of some days. So I don't see myself upgrading, but I needed a second camera for this shoot that I did yesterday. So and it was
Well, it's fun to
$65
try
a day
stuff out.
versus a 6,000 camera
6,000 to buy the body.
to buy the body. Yeah. They were
Really,
having a
it
rebate
doesn't
though.
even have the battery grip, or it's not built in for
No, dude, like
6,000.
look at this thing.
Wow.
Like
Well, I know a
it's
lot of
still
people.
not big enough.
Yeah, a lot of people still like just not having the battery grip. I like it for stills because then you get the button on top when you go vertical. But I don't think very
Yeah, me
many
too.
people go vertical anymore because they just do it in post because the sensors are so good. It's just like shoot a little wider and crop it out, and
Right.
you're good to go. So I don't
Well,
know. I
I'll
think
say
there's
from
a
the
lot of
agency
people.
stand, yeah. Well,
Okay.
if you're shooting for an agency now, like you have to shoot. There's no more of that shoot horizontal and then crop it and post. They require you to shoot vertically
Well, that's good.
to the point. Yeah, well, kinda. There's two video guys that I know that are shooting verticals with reds. With it's getting dumbed down now. Like, what are most people watching their phone? 720 probably at best, maybe 1080 if they're at full resolution. But like, it's getting out of hand with some of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you want to future as an agency, you'd want to future proof it. So if you did shoot red vertically, it'd be great because then down the
Yeah.
road, or you think about a trade show or something like that where you have this great big screen. I could see that. I used to work with a guy who sold a lot of footage, and he would ask me to shoot vertical because they were trying to show, these new monitor companies were trying to show off their new 12K monitors. Well,
Oh,
the only way you're going to get that is to shoot vertical 8K
yeah.
and then stitch, and then create some plates so that
Stitch
you
three of
could
them.
stitch
Yeah.
it together and get but that is there's a whole lot to that too, and stitching it. And I wish Eric
Man,
was
I hope
on
that.
this podcast because he worked on a project, and we'll talk about it when we get him on next. But
Yeah.
he worked on a project early on in the summer where he was shooting for, it's not IMAX, but it's like the IMAX. So
Okay.
great big huge theaters that kind of almost surround. And
Oh.
it's a whole different way of shooting. You can't just go in and shoot wildlife like I would shoot wildlife for a program. As far as framing, it's all
Hmm.
different. And you got to kind of know what's required to make it all happen so that they can fill this monster screen. So we'll talk about it with him
Man.
because he learned a
Yeah.
lot. And I think that's another niche, right? So if you can
Hmm.
figure that out or become aware of it, that's a whole nother thing that could be kind of cool. But
Yeah.
there's probably not as many projects that require that sort of a um, talent. But who knows? If you're doing that and you're in Alaska, that might be kind of
Yeah.
nice to at least
Do
tell them.
people still go to IMAX? I didn't even know if there's IMAX theaters.
I would
Maybe
think
at the
so.
museums.
Yeah, that's still going. And I think
Hmm.
they can actually be moneymakers if they're done correctly and if they're good and shot properly. But he can tell us about some of the things where, you know, if you didn't
Oh,
shoot
I'm
it
sure.
properly, you might have whatever's in the center looks great, but on the edges you have trees that are bowed, and there's a certain amount of that
Hmm.
they can fix in post. But if there is a certain amount that it just wasn't, if you're panning across something and it almost like rolls with the screen. He was talking about all kinds of funky things. It was for a new project, and I don't know how much he can talk about. I'm not going to say anything. He can, if he
Yeah.
can talk about it, then we'll talk about it. But,
Yeah.
um, oh, did you hear that? Sounds like
Oh,
somebody's leaving.
honking in Alaska. Wow.
So, what else do we have? I thought I had a few more things on my list, but I
Hold on.
can't.
I have. Um, so when we were down in New Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
we were almost stepping on things.
Oh, yeah, rattlesnakes. That was like
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm so aware of that stuff when I get down there, and I'm like, I'll probably not see one. I mean, we're in an active
It's a change of
construction
pace
site.
for you, though.
But yeah, I mean, it's like you got to be on your toes. And last time, usually when I'm shooting in areas like that, I wear the snake boots, but I didn't have them with me. So,
Yeah, I didn't wear them either. I didn't wear them for any of this, and I've seen a bunch. The funny thing is, so post when I got back, I was giving them a debrief, and I made a comment about, oh yeah, we saw a few snakes, and we weren't able to get. I got a little bit of footage of one of them through this whole thing. We were supposed to call those in. So like every time we saw one, we were supposed to call it in because they would shut down the site, and then they do like a safety risk assessment. So we
mm,
like broke some rules,
mm.
right?
Well, I had hiked off. I was on the phone when I found that first snake, and it was moving different direction. And I was like, I tried to get a shot of it with my phone just so we'd have it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I was on the phone, and then, you can't wrangle a rattlesnake with just one person. The only way
Right.
is to have two people. And, just because I don't want to mess with it too much, but you can create enough movement where it's going to pay attention to you and then put your attention on whatever that movement is, and then you can get some video. So if you would have been close, I would have tried that, but I
Yeah, I was
didn't even
flying a
try it.
drone.
So yeah, you were too busy tied up at the moment. So we would just let it
I was
go. And it
trying
was
not to
going
kill
away, so
anyone.
I think we're good. But it's definitely something to pay attention to. And it's kind of funny because we were talking before the podcast. I had a dream about snakes last night, and we hadn't even talked about this. So I don't know why I was dreaming about rattlesnakes in my sleep. And I know I just watched a little Instagram video of somebody that had this tiny, tiny little sidewinder in his hands,
Okay.
and it was just like this docile little sidewinder, but it was itty bitty little rattlesnake, and he had found it next to one of his buildings on his property, and he just picked it up and walked it 300 or 400 or 500 yards. I can't remember what he said, but walked it away and then just let it go. But it's cool to see just a little tiny sidewinder moving through the sand, and maybe I was thinking about that. I don't know, but
Well, it depends. So per
it
Google,
depends.
because they have their new AI overview that answers everything for us once you question it. Dreaming about snakes can have different meanings
Mm,
to include transformation. Snakes can represent change, transformation, and the ability to overcome obstacles.
mm-hmm. That's what I
If a
was
snake
doing.
sheds its skin in your dream, it symbolizes a new beginning.
Oh no, there was no shedding. I don't remember what it
Let's
was.
see.
I usually don't remember my dreams, but I do remember thinking about snakes.
It can also be a wake up call, Michael. A snake bite or an apparition in your dream could wake up call about something you've been overlooking.
There was
It was
no
telling you
snake
to
bite.
get back on the podcast.
That's funny. Oh my.
That's funny. What else do we have? Oh, I was going to talk about workflow on these big jobs. Um, Not specific. Like I don't want to get into workflows. We've talked about workflows a lot, but this this large project, there's 8 different states. Every time I've gone out, I've pulled all the clips and done like a select reel and then just exported it in ProRes. And that has been so helpful because I forget what I do. I don't know. Once I go to the next state, that's top of mind and everything's done. Like I don't have to send all the files. I don't have to do anything else. It's all just in there, broken it out for red footage, drone footage. And then if I use a different body, I'll throw that in there. And then the color profile that's associated with that, just because that Mavic 3, like there's always little things, right? That Mavic 3 Pro Cine, it's D-Log for the wide and the medium. But if you use that super tight, the 7X on there, you only get D-Log M, which is their like D-Log Lite version essentially. And so your color profiles all change. And so it just becomes a bit of a mess doing all of that. Regardless, I've thrown it into that select timeline and that's been super helpful. So if you have something like that, just go pull your selects and then export the select file. And that'll help you from having to go back through all the files and find the good stuff that you can't probably remember. So that's helped me a lot.
That is really helpful. I mean, I've been shooting so much moose stuff, and man, I just drag it to a drive and I look at it, and it's impossible to remember what you have. So if you just created a selects reel for the whole year or for the month or for whatever, it'd be really helpful down the road to know what you got. But I have drives of moose that I have no clue what's on there. I'm sure there's some
You
good
have
stuff,
Alaska
but
drives from 18 that you don't know what's on there.
exactly. So
Watch, there's a Wolverine on it or something.
I would remember that one. But just, well, like this year, I never got a rut pit video, and I don't think it's
Oh,
past the time, so I don't think I'm ever going to get or filmed it. I saw it occasionally, but it's just totally being in the right place at the right time. And but I got to thinking, well, I've got it in years past, so it'll be fine. I just won't have the new camera with the new sensor and all that kind of stuff. One thing I wanted to bring up, in addition to your workflow, that's equipment oriented, and you referenced it, and I didn't talk about it, but you're frustrated with the cards on the DJI being expensive, but with the new Raptor,
yeah.
the red Raptor, I can't do pre-record on that camera for more than like a second because it's using compact flash. What is it? Compact flash.
Oh, it's the bees.
Yeah. Just the same compact flash that I would use in my um, R5s. Only they're red proprietary, but they're not. I'm guessing that's why you can't record more than 1 second of pre-record because they're just not fast enough. And that's
Those things
probably it
have to
with
be faster
DJI.
than these mini mags, don't they?
No, because the mini mags on the Helium, I mean, we're still shooting 8K, right? How much more data is it putting down? So you got a Helium at 8K, Super 35, Raptor
Yeah.
8K, Super 35. I'm shooting like 30 frames a second. I'm not doing anything crazy. Say you're on the Helium, it doesn't matter what frame rate you're at on the Helium. You could be at 120 at
Right.
4K, and you can pre-record that if you want to. I don't think there'd be a reason to do it, but you can do it. But those cards were proprietary to Red, and they were um, very expensive. And I used to complain about it, but I would rather have a more expensive card that could give me that ability to do pre-record. I mean, everybody talks about pre-record, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I
Yeah,
have
this
a project,
A93 actually has a pre-record like photo thing where you hold it down and it'll pre-record the photo.
right? Yeah, and the new
I'm not.
R5 II has that pre-record in it,
Yeah.
but it's not very helpful. I mean, this whole project that I shot in the Arctic, I shot on the Red Helium because what we were shooting, you had to have pre-record, or else you're going to just waste a lot of data just hit and record because it's almost impossible to guess when what's going to happen. But if you got pre-record rolling, and you don't have to have it extreme, it was like 6 to 8, sometimes 10 seconds,
Yeah.
depending on what I was shooting. There's no way. It's impossible to do it on the Red Raptor. So while cards
Huh.
can be more expensive, I think I would gladly pay the money to get to have that option.
That's
So
crazy.
I'm still rather go with
I
the
figured there'd be a
Helium.
firmware update or something, but I guess maybe it is the cards.
It's totally a guess. I don't know. Nobody's told me that
Mm-hmm.
that's what it is, but it's the only thing I can think of. I mean, these cameras start up faster. The computers are probably faster that are inside the camera. So you would think it's
Mm-hmm.
capable of dealing with the data, but it's got
Mm-hmm.
to be these write speeds. Now, they
Hmm.
say that you're only supposed to use red certified cameras, which are made by, or certified cards, which are only made by, what is it, Angelbird?
Oh,
Is that
Angel
the
Bird,
right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I showed up to shoot moose the other day, and I downloaded both cards and forgot my red cards, and I had I don't know, a SanDisk or what is it? What's that other one that starts with Delkin?
Oh, a
And I'm like,
Delkin, yeah.
okay, I guess we're going to try this card and see if it works. And it worked. It does come up and say this is not a red card. You're going to be sent to hell for using a card that's not
Right.
red certified. But I was like, well, I got no other choice, and it worked just fine. So
How funny.
yeah, so I
Huh.
don't know. It's just a complaint that I have that you spend all that money on a camera and you for wildlife. Now maybe the Hollywood guys or other people using these reds, it doesn't matter. They don't need the pre-record if you're doing,
Right.
spoken word script stuff. But for wildlife, the pre-record comes in, so it just saves on data. Now you're chewing through batteries when you're on pre-record, but
Yeah, it's like recording. Yeah.
yeah, you can just sit there and watch those batteries go down and down. Oh, another thing that I did in the Arctic is I only had so many batteries. I don't know. I think I had 8 of the Bebob 150s, which are pretty good.
Okay.
I can get
Yeah.
without doing pre-record, I could get, I don't know, maybe an hour and 15, hour and a half.
That's not bad. Yeah.
With
That's good.
pre-record, it's cut way down.
Yeah.
But one of the guys on the shoot had those small rig 212s. I could get 2 hours out of a 212. Now,
Yeah.
charging them takes forever, but
Yeah.
we had a generator. We weren't on wilderness area, so we could use a generator, and we weren't in a national park. So every night we'd have to run the generator to charge all these batteries that I was using. But, and the solar system that I had the year before would have done it, but, it was a different company and we didn't have a solar. So we just went, I would have rather had the solar because it was pretty cool. But that project, we floated a river. So camp changed. We were up for 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, something like that. And we're floating 140 miles of river, and we were stopping wherever we found what we wanted to shoot. And sometimes we'd stay for a day, but sometimes we'd stay for 5 days or 3 days or 4 days. So having a big solar system that you'd have to lay out and set up would be kind of a pain in the butt if you're constantly moving.
Totally.
Every other place where I've used these really nice solar systems, you're in the same camp for the whole time. And that's really awesome because once you're set up, you're set up. But if you had to break it down every time you moved camp, that would be kind of a pain in the butt. So the generator is better, but it was pretty cool. The Arctic, the one thing that I'll say about this trip on the Arctic was 0 people for 3.5 weeks. Didn't see a soul, and trash. Even in Denali, you might see trash on the side of the road. Not because somebody threw it out, but maybe a Kleenex
Blown
blew
or
out of
something.
somebody's car or whatever. And it's very minuscule. And even in Alaska in general, not a lot of trash.
Right.
But in the Arctic, this is a big fat 0. It was
Really?
amazing. It's so clean, so pristine up there. It's just amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah, that was cool. And definitely recognizable. You just pay attention to that kind of stuff. So I would
That's
definitely
really
do a
cool.
trip like that on our own. I've talked with people for years about floating a river in the Arctic, but it always seems so remote and so difficult. And I'm no river runner. I don't know what I'm doing in
Right.
rapids or anything like that. Well, guess what? Those rivers up there, they're so big, they don't have rapids. They're just great, big, slow moving rivers. So it would be a blast. I think you still need to have somebody that knows what the hell they're doing because
Yeah.
that river is, I don't know, who knows how deep they are. They got to be really deep. We never checked, but
Oh, I'm sure they're deep.
you could die still, but I think your
Yeah.
chances are a lot. If we had to do it, if somebody said, you two are going to go to the Arctic and you're going to float this river, we could do it. I would just feel a lot better if I had somebody that actually knew how to drive a raft, float a raft,
Right.
captain a raft, whatever you call it.
I've been on a raft twice. So
Yeah. The guy we had was a freaking rock star. The guide that we had for that job, he's a Denali rescue ranger up on for people that are climbing
oh, that's
Denali.
cool.
Yeah, super badass, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and he's so unassuming and so just humble, and you had to drag stuff out of him to. He cooked for us. He drove the boats. He's constantly setting up stuff. He's hauling gear for us, and he just doesn't care about never a complaint at all about anything. And his cooking was like pretty awesome too. But this guy last winter kite skied across the Arctic like 700 miles by himself.
What?
Yeah.
That's
And it's like,
nuts.
has that ever even been done before? He's like, I don't think so. But if I wouldn't have drug it out of him, he would have never ever said, hey, guess what I did last year, guys? I kite skied across the Arctic.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was super, super cool to learn hear some of his stories, and then just someone that's so adept in the. I mean, I feel like I'm pretty adept out there, but I'm like 1% compared to his 100% of what he's able to do out there and survive and thrive.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Pretty cool.
Huh. Yeah, it's interesting. Just talking to people, because I would talk to these linemen. And I mean, some of those guys down in New Mexico, they've been down there for 6 months. And they have families, and they just go out there and they work, and they go back to a trailer most of the time. They've pulled a travel trailer or fifth wheel to some RV park somewhere. And they just do that for 7 days a week, just so we can all have power. And it's, I don't know, these guys are crazy. And there's people everywhere, but you just don't hear about them because they don't beat their chest. Some of them beat their chest, but like those guys, there was one guy that we talked to, and he'd done it for 7 years, and just an unassuming guy. And he outworked 4 new apprentices in the bucket and beat them by like an hour.
Yeah, they were both doing the same job on 2 different poles. He was by himself, and then the other one had 4 guys, and he
4 guys.
And he knew. He's like, watch this. Here, hold my beer. And he wasn't trying to beat his chest, but he knew we were watching too. And when we went and talked to him, he's like, did you see what I did? He's like,
Yeah,
I did all this work by myself, and those guys are still up there working. They probably spent an extra hour.
right.
But yeah, those guys are making pretty decent money, I'm
They're making
guessing.
good money. Yeah.
And he's not spending any money because those guys, we thought they had hours, but they don't even have hours, right? They were just,
It was just days.
it was just working. So unless you had a weather day, they're working 7 days a week. Who knows how many hours every day, sun up to sundown.
Yeah, that one day, I mean, we were there sun up to sundown.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and we thought that they would like cut out at 4 or 5 or whatever, and we'd go get something to eat. No, we still went and got something to eat, but we came back. Those guys don't get to go out.
right.
Wow. There's some really cool people out there in this world. And that's the cool thing about doing our job is you meet some of these really interesting people because they're not doing a desk job or they're not in some city. They're actually out there making stuff happen that's very specialized and very interesting. And they're doing it because they love to do it. Well, mostly, I would guess mostly. But
Yeah.
those guys dangling from a helicopter, that's a special breed.
Well, and that guy, so they nicknamed that guy Easy because he's just easy to get along with. And everything, we're going to strap you to the side of a helicopter. Okay. We're going to hang you from a rope. Okay. How'd I fly? You're good. Okay. Like, he was just very like, okay, we're going to give you a camera and we're going to strap one on you. Can you clip it to the top of the tower? Yep. Okay. Like, just very like
Nonchalant.
even keeled.
Yep.
We got a smile out of him when we showed him a camera or a picture from the camera. And it was just like, that's cool. It was whatever.
Yeah, most people would be over there beating their chest saying, look at me, check this out.
Right.
Look what I was doing. And he was like so easygoing. But he's the guy that ran all the safety meetings too, because he's so even keel. But he was so into you didn't, even if you said you knew what he was talking about, he sat there and made you go through that safety meeting and listen to the whole thing, which they have a safety meeting before they do anything. Before you eat a potato chip, you have to have a safety meeting. Now, if this gets caught in your throat or if you get a cut on your lip, you might want to gargle with some salt water.
Right.
Whatever it is. We had to do it every safety meeting. And anytime we changed the location, we had to go to a safety meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, I'm sure it's.
Well, and that's not protocol for most. Like, we aren't required to do that. I think that's me coming from because I was oil and gas before this, just knowing all the hazards that are out there. If, heaven forbid, that transmission line becomes energized and something happens, I mean,
or
forget the cameras
or breaks.
Yeah, we may become potato chips. And then some of that tension, if it comes loose, like game over.
It's like a whip.
There's gonna be 2 Brandons.
The other thing about that though, and is you get buy-in from the crew really fast. If you
Mm-hmm.
participate and you're there just saying, "Hey, I'm no special person. I'm just here to document you guys and, you know, I'm going to do whatever you guys do as far as the safety meetings or the morning gatherings and they do stretches every morning and we participated in all that. And I think they
Yeah.
look at you like, "Oh, okay. They're not these prima donnas that are rolling into town and just doing their own thing. They're actually doing what we do." We were wearing all the same safety stuff, the hard hat, which
Yeah.
was required, but I
Yeah.
think that goes a long way in getting a more creative picture because they're more willing to work for it with you if you
Mm-hmm.
go in with that kind of attitude and that kind of you know we're there to learn and be safe
Yeah.
just like they are. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think it helps a lot.
yeah, yeah, which hopefully
Um,
creates more jobs down the road.
yeah. I mean, it is a business after all. So there's that part. Yeah.
So there's that.
Okay. What else do I have? Let's see. We covered the Arctic, covered the boat. I made notes.
Oh, good. Yeah, I
I can't.
didn't
I
make
couldn't.
notes.
I can't. Like I couldn't tell you. Oh, actually I had a breakfast burrito. I was gonna say I couldn't tell you what I had for breakfast, but I do.
One thing that I can talk about when we were talking about storage is, we
Yeah.
talked about it on the podcast and you and I both bought a NAS system, but I have my NAS set up at your house right now. And so I didn't have it
It's
up
right
here
there.
this year, but I'm like, what am I going to do for storage this year? Cause with the red, you just start chewing up a lot of data. Well, Eric had bought a drive enclosure, a QNAP
Mm-hmm.
drive enclosure. It's not a NAS. And then he bought some, I think they were 16 or 18 terabyte drives.
Oh,
And I think it's 4 terabytes. I don't know where it's at right now, but I mean, it's over the counter. I can't see it. I think it's four.
4 bays.
Is it 4 bays? Or maybe it's 5 bays.
Oh,
I don't
oh, you
know.
said 4 terabytes, so I'm just clarifying. Is it 4 bays at
I mean,
16
it's
each?
4 bays. I think it's 16. So what is that? 48?
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
16. That's 32. So
No, it's
64.
64. Yeah.
64 terabytes. And then if you RAID 5 it, then I was thinking I was getting 52, something like
Makes
that,
sense.
um, usable. And I did the whole thing for $1,000.
Oh,
So
that's
if
way
you're
cheaper.
looking, yeah, now it's slow as molasses, but if you're just using it for backup and you just want to dump a bunch of stuff, that's going to take me through the summer here. I think I've
Huh.
used 30 terabytes of it. So I still have
This year?
space. Well, because I came up here and I started dumping stuff. All my little travel drives, I'm like, I don't know if I back these up. I just dumped them on there. I
Holy
just started
moly.
dumping all kinds of stuff on there. So if anybody's interested, I'll put links in our show notes or on our posting page with the Amazon links to where I bought it. It was a QNAP enclosure. And then the drives that I bought were actually refurbished drives. So I'm riding on the edge there. But Eric did the same thing and he's like, I haven't had any issues. And they show up like brand new. So hopefully they'll never ever be a problem. But it is RAID 5. So if one drive dies, I can still rebuild it. But um, it's just a pretty cost efficient way to get a ton of storage if you're just looking to back stuff up. If
Okay.
you're trying to edit off of it, it's not going to happen. It's going to be slow.
Huh.
So I'll put
It'll
links
be
of that.
cool when they finally get large scale. Well, see, I don't think they're going to go with solid state large scale ones because they can't. I think they have like fragmentation issues with large scale memory drives. At least it sounds like when it's continually written to and continually running. So I don't know if we'll move away from a spinning drive on those type of systems for a while. Either that or they have that all answered and
Well, there's still people that are using tape backup
mm-hmm.
because it's mass storage and you can put it on tape. So
Yeah.
I guess if that's still in use, that's pretty archaic. So it's probably going to be a minute. But this was a good way to get a lot of, because I used to buy the what was it? 8 terabyte drives from Costco. And if you got them on sale, you might get them for like 180 or maybe 200.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Just say 200.
Mm-hmm.
That was 8 terabytes. So if I bought 4 of those for $200, I'm at 1,000. And then I'm
Right.
only at 30 terabytes. So
Yeah, that's
it's
pretty cool.
a good way to go if you're just looking for mass storage.
Huh. Um, we're at an hour 20 now. I
I think
remembered something else that I did, but I don't know if we need to get into it. It's with that Jeep camper that I bought.
we should, but let's do it on the next one. And I think it'd be cool to get some pictures
Yeah,
or
because I have a
video.
walkthrough and everything of it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that.
Um, I'm just looking through all the jobs I've done.
Mm,
We didn't talk about the open.
no,
Do we have anything from that?
not really.
Everything else. I have that one shoot, Tyler and Tamika, but that one's like because that was that family where she has cancer and she's 32 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, I don't have too much.
Well, speaking of that, I'm going to put a link in the show notes to. I have a buddy up here that has leukemia,
Mm,
and they started a GoFundMe. So if you
okay.
want to support, I mean, I'm amazed at how many people that don't know these people at all, and someone's pitching in $20 or whatever. I'm going to put a link out there. So if anybody's interested in helping somebody out he just had a baby girl, and then he got diagnosed when the baby was born. I mean, and
Mm.
he left work and he had a pain in his leg and went to the doctor and didn't come back home for 2 months because they're like, you got
Oh,
leukemia.
geez.
Yeah. Then he came back home and now he's down in Seattle going through stem cell stuff. So I'll put a link in and you can read about it if you're interested. If it's something that you do, that'd be kind of cool. If not, not a big deal.
That's crazy.
I know. And a super cool guy. Not a photographer, just a friend, and just grew up in Alaska and loves the outdoors, and so anyhow.
I know I start to think about all that stuff. I hurt myself. I didn't hurt myself. My body was hurt doing something else. And I've been wearing this brace, but it's like every little ache and pain, it's just been top of the mind lately. Like, is that something worse? And so I went and got it checked out, and they're like, no, it's tennis elbow. And I'm like, what is tennis elbow? I don't even play tennis. They're like, yeah, you just stress this tendon. And so I have this thing that wrap around my arm and it applies pressure to it. But oh man, crashed my dirt bike. My wrist was all swollen, so I was wearing a brace for a while.
Yeah, and none of
Kristen's
that
been making
holds a
fun of me.
candle to someone that gets diagnosed with cancer or any of that other stuff. So I'm like, I have
I
all
know, I
these
can't
little
even imagine.
ailments too, and I'm like, this is like not that big a deal compared to what some people are going through at the moment. So just shut up
Right.
and do your work and quit complaining about I'm saying you as in me, talking to
Oh no,
myself.
I feel the same
I'm
way.
like,
You're
quit
just like,
complaining. Just
this
get
is
out there and
nothing.
rub some dirt in it and go.
But then I
So,
think you hurt yourself more is what happens because you have that mindset where you're like, just this is nothing, just do it. And then you're like, why is my whole right side numb? I don't know. It's not good. Got to take
yeah,
care of yourself.
exactly. Yep. All
Huh.
right. Well, this is a good first one back. I mean, uh, we should be able to hit it hard from here on out. And then stay tuned for the Wild and Exposed story behind the image podcast. That should be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Now we got to find time to edit.
I know. Editing is the.
But if I do it today, it'll get done pretty fast. Which
You
that's
think?
my plan. Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
because if
I
it's
will
all fresh in
send.
my mind, I'll get it out. But if I wait a couple of days, it's going to be torture.
Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. It's good to be back. I know I missed the podcast. I missed talking to you all. So let us know what you think in the comments below, and we will see you next time on the Truth and Legend podcast.